Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Ocean Wastewater Pollution Learning Exchange. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Kristen Mays, and I'm the Reef Resilience Network Strategy Lead and the host for today's Learning Exchange, which is brought to you by the Reef Resilience Network. For those of you who aren't familiar with the network, we are a global community of marine managers, practitioners, and experts working together to effectively manage, restore, and protect coral reefs around the world. The network is spearheaded by the Nature Conservancy, but with support from many, many partners. The purpose of today's interactive session is to build on the Reef Resilience Network's existing ocean wastewater pollution resources and provide you, marine managers and practitioners, with an opportunity to network and learn from your peers and experts about this important and super challenging topic. Throughout the next 90 minutes, we want to give you a few chances to interact with experts and managers, which we'll explain to you shortly. I'm joined by my Reef Resilience Network colleague, Michelle Gralty, and Deanna Pietri and Elizabeth Weathers from ERG, who are all helping facilitate today's learning exchange. Thanks to ERG, who's been instrumental in organizing this event. I will now hand it over to Deanna to provide additional details about what we're going to do together today.
Our agenda. So we've already done the welcome and gone through the logistics. And so for the rest of the learning exchange today, it will first include an overview of the wastewater pollution course content and its application. Then we're going to have presentations from two managers who actually took the course. So they're going to share their work that they've been doing since taking the course to address ocean wastewater pollution and really describe, how the Reef Resilience Network resources have helped them. And so after that, we will have a chance for topic-specific breakout groups. Those will be 45 minutes and on 3 topics that are really critical for wastewater pollution management. So those are monitoring, communications, and nature-based solutions. So we'll be discussing those topics in small groups, and then we'll reconvene in plenary for a 15-minute question and answer session with the managers you will have heard from earlier, as well as the experts, which we'll talk about in a few moments. There will be some experts in the breakout groups who will introduce, and so the Q&A will be for both the managers and the experts. And then we'll close with a summary and wrap-up session. And so just a quick note here too, the Q&A is at the very end. So that's why we encourage you to either keep track of your questions by asking them in the Q&A if they come up earlier on, or just write them down for yourself, so that you can remember them and ask them when we get to the Q&A with everybody at the very end of this session. So now moving on to the next slide, we want to learn a little bit more about you before we dive into our content. So we have some polls that are going to pop up in Zoom. And the first, is where is the focus of your work? So we'll just allow a few moments for folks to respond. It looks like mainly we're getting folks from the Caribbean and the Atlantic, as well as the Pacific, a little bit more from the Caribbean and Atlantic side of things, some from the Pacific, and then a small proportion from the Middle East. So that's awesome. We have folks from all over. So it's really great to see everybody who is here today. Okay, I think we can move on to the second poll question. So we want to know more about your work and want to know if you are a marine resource manager or practitioner, a scientist or researcher, or if you consider yourself something else. A lot of representation from managers and practitioners, which is great, as well as some scientists and researchers, some others. We'll get to hear a little bit more potentially in the breakout groups. They'll be a lot smaller, so we'll be able to hear a little bit more about everybody's backgrounds. Thanks for that. And so now on to the final poll question. We want to know, did you take the Wastewater Pollution Online Course? Just wait a moment for that poll question to pop up. Michelle, could we cue the next?
Yeah, I'm just having a bit of trouble launching that one. Let's see. There we go.
No problem. There we go. So yeah, we want to know if you took the course already or not yet? Awesome. This is really cool to see. We have a good proportion of folks who have taken the course. So thank you for taking the course and thank you for coming today as a follow-up. We really wanted to have this build on all of the great information from the courses, which we're going to talk about more in a moment. And for those who haven't taken it yet, this is a great opportunity to learn a little bit more about what the content of the course is and get excited to take it. So we're now going to move on from these polls and into our next topic, which is, I'm going to hand it back to Kristen. She is going to talk more about the wonderful wastewater pollution resources that the network has available.
Thanks, Deanna. Well, interesting to see. Yeah, we have about half the people who've taken the course, so that's helpful for me. So yeah, just real quick, a quick overview of existing ocean wastewater pollution resources that are available and free via the Reef Resilience Network. And I should just preface this with saying that we developed these resources a few years ago in response to requests from network members. We'd been hearing for years about really interest in addressing this challenging topic. And so we developed these introductory resources, and the idea here is about helping marine managers understand the basics so that they or you can enter into conversations, collaborate with practitioners from different sectors, and also just begin to address wastewater pollution in your areas. And so the course, as you can see here, is one of those key resources. It helps build understanding of how wastewater pollution threatens ocean and human health, how it is managed, and how management can be improved to protect coastal environments. And this is a self-paced course. It's comprised of 2 lessons, and they include videos and self-assessments for those of you who haven't taken the course yet. And the course is available in English, Spanish, and French. In addition to the online course, we have an online toolkit, which is basically web pages summarizing the content that's in the online course. And the idea here is it gives you a quicker snapshot of that content. And it's also a really good place. We have a lot of managers that go there to look for kind of communication or language ideas to get some help on how to talk about this topic. We also have case studies highlighting successful wastewater pollution management strategies. We have journal articles, summaries, highlighting the latest wastewater pollution science. And then we have the Ocean Sewage Series, which are webinars and podcasts that discuss and demystify the issue of ocean wastewater pollution and provide some ideas on how you can address it. I now want to introduce the 2 managers who we're going to hear from next. Both Chris and Christina took the online course, and we really wanted to highlight how they've been able to apply some of the learnings from the course and share how they're addressing ocean wastewater pollution in their places as a way to inform and inspire others. So Christina Comfort is a water quality specialist with VI, which is Wastewater Alternatives and Innovations. This is a small nonprofit based in Hawaii, dedicated to reducing sewage pollution from cesspools. Her background is in oceanography, and she has managed many research projects involving long-term water quality and oceanography measurements in the context of human impacts in coastal systems. Chris Corbin is the coordinator of the United Nations Environment Program, Cartagena Convention Secretariat. He's based in Jamaica. Chris has over 30 years of national and regional program and project management experience and has been involved in several intergovernmental processes, all aimed at improving ocean governance and water resource management in the wider Caribbean region. I'm now going to turn it over to Chris and Christina to tell us a bit more about yourselves and your work. And Deanna already mentioned this, but I'll just remind you, we're going to hold questions till the very end of the session. So if questions come up for Chris or Christina, please feel free to share them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get back to those at the end, or of course, jot them down yourself. So we'll first hear from Chris. Welcome, Chris, and thanks for joining.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Good morning, I guess, for people on the Pacific side. Good afternoon, good evening to everyone. Thank you so much to the Reef Resilience Network and the Nature Conservancy and the number of partners to invite me to sort of set a little bit of the stage in terms of why did I take this course? How has it benefited me personally, but also us institutionally? So a little bit of who am I? I was born in Barbados. I grew up in St. Lucia, had most of my career working with the government of St. Lucia, and then moved to Jamaica, where I now work as the coordinator for the UNEP Cartagena Convention Secretariat. I think more importantly as well, I've transitioned a bit from being a teacher to being a hardcore scientist doing water quality, and now being responsible for integrating two major programmatic areas for the UNEP Cartagena Convention Secretariat, one on pollution and one on marine biodiversity. And honestly, what I found is that as much as we talk about integration, we weren't integrating. And that was a lot of the driving force for me taking part, participating in the course, attending the webinars, contributing information, but more importantly, also learning. And I think that's the message I really want to send from this slide. It really is critical, no matter whether you're coming to this from a wastewater sanitation perspective or from a marine biodiversity conservation perspective, there is something for all of us to learn. And just by the way, I enjoy playing quite a lot of volleyball. Next slide, please. I have been very much involved in the wastewater business. I am a marine pollution program manager. That was my substantial role for the last 15, 20 years at the Secretariat, and very much involved in a number of regional projects looking at improving wastewater management. And I just want to highlight some of the work that we are doing and really how this particular resource has helped shape that. A few of the projects have been identified here. I'm not going to go into them in detail, but I just want to highlight for the participants, what are some of the activities that are going on within the wider Caribbean region? Some of these are at regional level, looking at the different sets of regional strategic plans, linking wastewater, water, and climate change. We're doing a lot to develop regional strategies on wastewater, trying to harmonize regional wastewater standards. One of the key areas of need is on information management. We've been doing a lot in databases and improving wastewater management and treatment through local, community-based, and national interventions. We've been working at the sub-regional level, but also importantly at the national level on a variety of activities, from developing communication strategies to looking at treated wastewater reuse. This is a rather new area for the countries in the wider Caribbean region, and many of them lack policies, lack standards as how do you go about creating an environment for promoting treated wastewater reuse. In Jamaica, Belize, and Suriname, we've worked on a number of national policies, strategies, and legislation, looking at improving wastewater and sludge management. So this is what I was involved in. So I knew a lot about wastewater and sanitation, but why particularly was the work of Reef Resilience Network, was the work of Nature Conservancy so important for us in terms of how we now go about in future implementation? How can we change what we do? Next slide, please. And this is where I say that one of the key things is bringing new ideas and approaches. Wastewater management and sanitation, biodiversity conservation, those are not new for many of us. Maybe what's new is how we approach them. And one of the first activities that we did, even as we were implementing our Jeff Crew Plus project, and that's a project funded by the Global Environment Facility, is start to look at opportunities to get young people and journalists excited about talking about wastewater management. How can we change the rhetoric? Let's be blunt. How can we talk about shit? How can we get journalists to start talking about this as an issue? How can we offer scholarships to young persons so that they see that there's an opportunity in working in sanitation, and not just that, but working in sanitation and linking it to issues of marine resource conservation. But I think importantly, we realized that there was still a gap. There was still a gap in terms of changing the attitudes, perceptions, behavior about wastewater management. And I'm proud to say how attending and taking part in the course really triggered. I said, I need to find out more about what Nature Conservancy, what the Reef Resilience Network is doing. And that spawned a partnership that resulted in a regional workshop, which we only just completed last month, looking at changing attitudes, perceptions, and behaviors about wastewater management. It brought together practitioners who are involved in environmental management, involved in sanitation, but started to talk about wastewater from a behavioral change perspective. If we really want to make changes, if we really want to create an integrated approach to solving our marine resource management challenges, it has to be more integrated, and integrated not just in the activities that we do, but integrated in the way we think about the activity, integrated in our perceptions about the activity, and integrated in our responses. I believe nature-based solutions offers an opportunity. It's a win-win. It's a win-win for sanitation practitioners. It's a win-win to address issues of climate change, and it's a win-win for marine biodiversity, conservation, and restoration. So it's really been a pleasure for me personally. You never stop growing, you never stop learning. I consider myself a hardcore scientist, but I've been exposed to new ways of doing things, new ways of communicating, and I really do want to encourage everyone here who hasn't taken the course, please do. And everyone who has taken the course, please try to implement the recommendations. And thank you so much, Kristen.
Thanks, Chris. We'll now turn it over to you, Christina.
Thank you. Aloha, everyone. My name is Christina Comfort, and I'm with PHI, Wastewater Alternatives and Innovations, based in Hawaii. So just a quick introduction. I am a water quality specialist currently, but my background is in really a really science-oriented, research-oriented background in biological oceanography. So I did my master's in biological oceanography and then worked for many years as an oceanographic research specialist at the University of Hawaii. And I worked on coastal oceanography, long-term time series monitoring. I worked a lot with instrumentation and various coastal oceanographic processes, both in Hawaii and around the Pacific. Later on in the time that I was an oceanographic researcher, I started volunteering with the Surfrider Foundation as the Oahu Chapter Blue Water Task Force Coordinator. And this is how I started getting really interested in wastewater pollution issues in Hawaii, because that program it's a citizen science program that monitors wastewater pollution at beaches all around the island of Oahu. And there's different chapters all throughout the area where Surfrider functions. Currently, I'm working on my PhD in biological oceanography in the Coastal Oceanography Lab with Margaret McManus as my advisor, and working at VI. I was formerly the program manager and now in the role of water quality specialist. So in my career pathway, I have kind of moved from working in a really research-focused, science-focused position to in nonprofit world, being more involved in advocacy and marine management. So I took the wastewater pollution course to expand my background about wastewater technologies, different case studies and things that are going on all over the world. And then also when I'm supervising new hires and interns, we've been using the wastewater pollution course as an onboarding resource to get everyone up to speed on wastewater pollution issues, both here in Hawaii and globally. So a little more about VI. We are a small nonprofit, relatively young, just a few years old, and our mission is to protect water quality and reduce sewage pollution in Hawaii by providing innovative, affordable, and eco-friendly solutions in the field of cesspool conversion. So we work in a lot of different areas. You can see our various pillars listed out on the bottom. So it includes everything from outreach and education to technology, pilot projects, and advocacy, working with our local and federal government to try to work out the financial side of addressing the wastewater infrastructure challenge in the islands. Next slide, please. So in Hawaii, there are about 83,000 cesspools. that discharge about 52 million gallons per day of untreated effluent into the ground. And a lot of this effluent reaches the groundwater table and then goes out onto our coral reefs. So this is a huge environmental hazard. And one of the things that we're trying to do at VI is figure out how we can convert cesspools to better systems than septic. So our typical septic system is pictured on the left. But since the septic system really only does minimal wastewater treatment, it's not the best option for converting cesspools, but that is kind of the typical option. So a lot of what VI is trying to do is educate people, both homeowners and legislators and managers, about different options that are available that do a better job at treating wastewater than a septic system. So the innovative options that we're looking at, here's some examples of innovative technology that VI has helped introduce to Hawaii. So on the left, you can see a geotextile sand filter system. So this is basically a special type of leach field. So you still have a septic tank coming from your house, but then there's a more advanced leach field system that can reduce nitrate pollution, biological oxygen demand in the effluent. And this is a new technology that's just recently been approved to be installed in Hawaii. So there are two different versions of this, with the highest rated version being NSF 245, which is a designation that means it reduces nitrate by at least 50%. So that's really exciting. They're approved, ready to go commercially in Hawaii, and we have some pilot projects that have been installed. We also have worked with Ridge to Reefs. I know Fal is on this call, who will be leading one of the breakout rooms in the technology section. So we've been working with them to get the bioreactor garden tested, approved, and ready to install. So that's another success story. And this technology is really great with over 80% nitrate reduction. And we're also thinking that with contaminants of emerging concern, this kind of nature-based system can also help reduce those type of pollutants into the marine environment. And VI has also been working with toilet scale solutions, and there's been over 50 incineration toilets that have been installed as replacement to porta potties, facility toilets, and home toilets. So this is a zero water, zero effluent solution, and VI was also instrumental in bringing that technology to islands. So next slide, please. And those are all kind of at the individual situation, individual home scale, but VI is also really interested in looking at innovative community scale wastewater systems. So there's a lot of places in Hawaii that have are on cesspools or septic systems, but they're very tight together. Like the neighborhoods are very, very dense. So really the most efficient solution to reduce pollution would be community scale systems with package plant type treatment. One system that we're looking at is called pressurized liquid only sewer, where each house has a holding tank, as you can see on the picture in the top right. So there's a holding tank where sludge and solids will settle out, but then the liquids all get pumped through narrow PVC type piping to a small scale treatment facility. So this is a lower burden on communities in terms of construction, in terms of maintenance, and it's also less expensive to install than a standard gravity sewer. We're looking right now for a pilot area to install this kind of system. This is a really successful model that's been used in other places around the US, but hasn't yet been installed anywhere in Hawaii. So one potential place that we're looking is in Miloli'i subdivision, which is a rapidly expanding, really densely built or densely planned area that's right in front of a community-based subsistence fishing area. So this is adjacent to the last native Hawaiian fishing village. It's a really important, culturally and biologically important reef system. So we're working with that community and hopeful that we can install a pilot system here. It's also, with these community scale systems, there's also a possibility for full water reuse and circular economy type models, which is really interesting to just think about shifting the paradigm of wastewater into a resource that could be reused. So I just wanted to go through some examples of the type of work that VI has been doing on innovative technologies, and just wanted to say that, you know, by taking the wastewater pollution course, that really helped me to feel more comfortable with engaging with these kind of engineering and technological type problems coming from my background as a scientist. So thank you.
Thank you both so much. Really awesome to just see the work that you're doing, learn more about it, see what you're already achieving, and hear how you've been able to use the course. And I should mention to everybody, we are in the process of updating all of our wastewater pollution resources, including the course. And so if you have any ideas for any ways that we can improve upon existing resources, or ideas for any new resources, like you know, a case study idea, in the survey at the close of the webinar, there'll be a question and we'll be asking you for some input. So I'll just tee that up now so you could be thinking if you have any suggestions for us. I'm going to turn it back to you, Deanna, to talk about our breakout groups and give everyone an opportunity to do some sharing.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Kristen. And thanks so much to Christina and Chris. Those were wonderful presentations, and we're really pleased for you to be sharing all of your work. And again, just remember, participants, that we will have time at the end of this to ask some questions to Christina and Chris if you have them. We're going to transition to breakout groups in a moment, but we wanted to do a brief polling exercise that just can help you all reflect on everything you've heard, you know, and think about some of the themes that we'll be discussing in the breakout groups. So we're going to be using Menti for the poll. So you can go to join it at menti.com up here, and then you enter the code that you see. And so we're going to please navigate there. And Michelle just dropped that information in chat. So thank you, Michelle. And so please go there, and then we're going to switch our screen so that we can share the results of the Menti polls as they come in. And so the first is that we want to hear about some challenges you have experienced in managing wastewater pollution. Just want to hear what you have to say about that, and thinking about, you know, reflecting on what you've heard from Chris and Christina about some of the solutions that they're undertaking, but also why they, you know, began to undertake it in terms of challenges like cesspools, and thinking about how to communicate this and get people talking about this in a way, and not being afraid to talk about these issues in terms of resource management. You know, we want to hear what your challenges are. So it's
and Deanna, I see the
Michelle?
code is different from what I put in the chat. The code is 83319203. Putting that updated one in the chat.
Thank you, Michelle. Start.
Ooh, and I can even delete the other one from the chat.
All right. So communication about pollution sources, that's a good one. And we're gonna, if you are interested in thinking about communication, just give a plug that that's one of our breakout groups. So that's something that we're going to be talking about extensively in there. Communication pollution sources. Welcome. And the Menti will stay open as well too, so you can continue adding things. Multiple outfall pipes, funding, siloing, awareness. So these are, yeah, again, some about the communication themes. Technology, we have a nature-based solutions group, so we'll be talking about that. Another one about finance, so thinking about those. Infrastructure, getting some cool ones in here, more about finance. Regulations, it's great. Governance, political will, so some kind of around these regulatory and policy issues that you're experiencing. Thinking about the invisibility of the problem and the lack of being able to see it, that's obviously a great one. And then thinking too about enforcement, so kind of getting again to end some of those, and education. So these are some really great ideas. Thank you for sharing those. You can continue to enter your responses in the Menti. But for the sake of time, we are going to move on to the next question, and these will keep populating. So, you know, we asked you about challenges, but we also want to hear about solutions. What are some solutions you have used in managing wastewater pollution? And again, we're going to talk about these a lot more in the breakout groups, but we do want to see, and it's great to see everybody's themes pop up all together in these word clouds. So just take a few moments to enter some solutions. And viruscape at events. That's an interesting one that hopefully whoever put that up can tell more about to their breakout group. Water quality monitoring. We have a water quality monitoring group. Wastewater gardens. It relates to our nature-based solutions breakout group that we'll be having. Enforcement. So again, that both being makes sense, a challenge and a solution. Reporting on water quality, I think that relates to kind of some of the themes we've discussed already about building coalitions, community education, green infrastructure and nature-based solutions, policies. These are some great themes, public education, incentives, pledges, a lot of really good ideas here. So again, you can keep adding your thoughts here, but we are going to navigate to the next screen so that we can begin going through the logistics of our breakout groups and get into those to give folks time to chat. So what we are going to be doing, and Elizabeth will share her screen here again in a second, we are going to be moving in 3 breakout groups to discuss solutions in more detail. And as I said earlier, we have some experts, and there will be various experts in each of these topical breakout groups. And so the first is going to be on monitoring, the first of these groups. And in that group, we have 2 experts, Amy Zimmer-Faust from the Nature Conservancy. And Amy is a water quality scientist at TNC, who is TNC Pacific's new wastewater pollution director. And she has over a decade of experience in sustainable solutions for tracking, treating, and mitigating the impacts of wastewater, stormwater, and agricultural runoff in freshwater, estuarine, and coastal ecosystems and communities. And then also in the monitoring group, we have Erica Perez from the Coral Reef Alliance. And as the senior program manager for Coral Reef Alliance Hawaii's Island Program, Erica has led the Clean Water for Reefs Puako project for the past 7 years. And she's been working to convert cesspools, which I heard about from Christina, along the Puako shore to have better technology to improve human and coral reef health. Then we're going to have a group focused on strategic communications. So Kristen, our host from TNC's Reef Resilience Network, will be in there. And Kristen is serving as the Reef Resilience Network strategy lead, and in that role develops, execute strategies, partnerships, communications, and capacity building activities to influence policy and practice in support of marine conservation globally. And we will also have with her Katie Hefner from RARE. Katie is the Senior Director of Partnerships and Engagement for RARE's Center for Behavior and the Environment. So Katie is working to build demand for applying behavioral science to sustainability challenges worldwide, including leading the Solution Search Program and managing external engagements, partnerships, and programs. And then finally, we have our nature-based solutions group, which will have Fall Mantha from Ridge to Reefs. Fall works as the Director of Agriculture and Sustainability, and in that role is working to reduce pollution from traditional and animal agriculture in American Samoa, as well as in other geographies like the Chesapeake Bay. And he is really a vital part of the Ridge to Reefs approach to think about how to marry best management practices for pollution reduction with natural soil carbon enhancements and direct production and resilience benefits to farmers while improving water quality. And then also in the nature-based solutions group, we'll have Mo Wise. Mo works at the Irvine Ranch Water District in California as the Natural Treatment Department's wetland scientist. And her position is really focused on urban treatment, wetland management and monitoring, and she works in a coastal watershed where runoff all drains to the ocean. So working on solutions to address that. Really appreciate everybody's inputs. As we had mentioned in the breakout groups, you can continue adding your thoughts to the Jamboards, and we will be leaving those open. So we really want to encourage you to use those Jamboards as a tool for sharing more thoughts. We'll be sharing them later, and I think it's just a really great opportunity to continue sharing your thoughts and to create kind of a collaborative space for folks to be sharing ideas. So what we want to do now is we want to transition to an open question and answer session. We would really love to hear your thoughts based on the key themes raised in your breakout group, and hear any questions that you have for the experts in your breakout group, or that you have for either Chris or Christina based on their questions, based on, their presentations earlier today. So we wanted to allow folks the opportunity for that. And you're also welcome to, share reflections from your breakout groups as well too. So if you could either use we're going to look at the Q&A, so you can put questions into the Q&A, but also you are free to raise your hand and to use the raise your hand function to ask a question. So and please, you can turn on your video while you are asking a question. So just wanted to open it up now and see if folks have questions that they want to discuss overall in our plenary session. And you can also drop your questions in the chat. One more way to do it.
Yana, I have a question. In our communications group, one of the challenges we talked about was having enough data about the impacts to advocate for funding and change in wastewater management. And my brain immediately went to, oh, wastewater pollution, water quality monitoring data. But often it's so much, so much more than water quality monitoring data that we need to advocate for change. And so I'm curious if the experts can share more about, when speaking to others about wastewater pollution, what are some other perhaps different socioeconomic aspects you're thinking about?
That is a great question, Michelle. I want to open it up to the experts and see if folks have things that they want to talk about in terms of a response to Michelle's question, and maybe particularly some who weren't in Michelle's group might have thoughts.
I can comment on it. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the question. So kind of how you take your data and turn it into action, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And if
kind
it's
of how
just
much
water
data
quality monitoring, or what other pieces of the data puzzle are effective for sharing?
Yeah. Working with absolutely. I think that there are lots of different indicators that you can look at. I think that there are socioeconomic indicators. Here in Hawaii, other indicators are really centered around cultural practices and really securing those kind of cultural practices that are led within those ecosystems that are really harmed and damaged by wastewater, like your fishing practices, as well as just your overall connection to coral reefs. I think there's value and time that could be spent into just the overall community connectivity and resilience of helping to manage wastewater, and within specific regions or impacts that tend to happen along shorelines of underserved communities, or again, that socioeconomic kind of question around indicators of what. So I do believe that there's lots of different types of indicators that you can look at that impact and have an overlay. Sometimes having a really good understanding of water quality is one step to kind of hitting that regulatory hand that then requires and then pushes movement forward. From a human health perspective, I think from a funding perspective, in order to kind of get that movement and get the resources needed to get to continue the ongoing monitoring or project development, to get that systems change, then that kind of, you want to look at like the whole scope, economic value to your region. Coral reefs here in Hawaii have a huge economic value that drastically impacts our area. So yeah, I mean, I think that there's a long list of different indicators that you can use to whatever audience you're speaking to. And kind of go off of, what will pull their string the best and modifying as needed.
Thanks, Erica. I think those are really great points, and thinking too about the different types of data that resonate with different folks is really great. I see in chat that there is a comment from Paco on data interpretation and easy understanding of water quality purpose. Paco, I was just wondering if that is more of a comment about what you've done or more of a question for the experts about kind of how to interpret the data.
Hi. Yes. I'm a citizen, regular citizen. I'm not a scientist. I've not studied biology. I just I'm a graphic artist. So when I obtain my data every Wednesday, I go to the different points and I process the bacteria samples and all that. And then I take my YSI and I just take all the data from the sensors in the YSI and drop it in the computer. And then I have to publish those results. And I'm expecting everyone in the community to understand the pH levels and why we're measuring pH. Why do I care about the pH? What's does 8 or 7 or 6 and dissolve oxygen and so forth. We have to explain why we're doing this. What's so important to do all this water monitoring, and we have to really emphasize in the interpretation of those data that we are obtaining. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Paco. And I see that Katie has her hand up to respond. And then after Katie, I want to go to a question from Gilbert in the chat. So Katie.
I was having trouble unmuting. I think Paco raised something that really important that was also highlighted in the question and what we're facing, which is, as scientists, we often think that people will make decisions based on data the same way that we make decisions based on data. And the reality is that people make their decisions based on a whole slew of other pieces of information that often have nothing to do with potentially the data that we think is most critically important. And so what we talked about, I am in the communications group, and I know we weren't supposed to dig in too much on this, but I do think it's really important that we talked a lot about the role of better understanding your audience and what matters to them and promoting that information. I mean, so for data, for example, sometimes it has nothing to do with the data of the water quality, and it has everything to do with the data about like what other people are doing, or the data around, it might not be a health impact. It might actually be an impact on something related to the ability to do their favorite sport. Or there could be all sorts of different motivators that exist outside of the environmental range of things. And I think as it's often hard as environmental scientists to think that other people wouldn't ever care or consider it. And sometimes instead of trying to make people care or consider it, it's easier to think about the things that they care about and frame the messaging in that way, and frame the data that we share in that way too.
Thanks, Katie. So the question that came in chat from Gilbert was how to approach the rise of sargassum and water quality and the effect that it has on marine species and the reef. So I think thinking to, something that's come up too, and then in relation to thinking about just how you think about compounding stressors and think about that. So if anyone has a quick response to that or suggestions for resources for Gilbert, and then otherwise we can move on. Chris.
Yes, thanks. And maybe a quick response on this, because I think sargassum is one of those issues that does really allow us to bring together the marine pollution fraternity, persons working on climate change, persons working on fisheries, persons working on biodiversity management and conservation. Some of the some of the indications are that nutrients have played a role, whether nutrients are coming from wastewater, from untreated sewage, or whether or not they're coming from agrochemical runoff. And it does vary. And a lot of the studies do suggest that a combination of the warming temperatures as well as nutrient enhancement is somewhat linked to the sargassum influx that we are seeing, which then itself has negative impacts. Also concerned about heavy metals within sargassum, depending on what you want to use it for. I'll try and find a link. We have combined a number of resources based on work that has been done by several partners, several universities, agencies are working on sargassum in the wider Caribbean region. So if I manage to locate it while this call is going on, I'll share it in the chat. If not, I'll probably share it with the organizers in terms of resources on sargassum and links to pollution and climate change. Over.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Well, we had a question from Sabina that I also want to make sure we have a chance to answer about specific plant species or places to find what are the best plants to use that local residents can plant to mitigate elevated nitrogen or nutrient levels before it reaches water bodies. So thinking about what are some locally based kind of nature-based solutions that could be undertaken. Wanted to see maybe some of those, and maybe Mo or Fal in the nature-based solutions group might have some thoughts on this. Mo, I see you went off mute.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. That's a huge part of my job right now, is installing plant species in our constructed wetlands that are going to uptake and remove nitrogen and phosphorus. We're trying to prevent algae blooms downstream in our estuary. And so what we use a lot in our wetlands are sedges and rushes. I know that we are coming from all over the world, honestly. So I would highly suggest going to a local native plant nursery, or just a plant nursery if there is one, or speaking with a restoration group to get the specific species of plants that you might want to use. In my area in Southern California, I use a lot of Carex, bulrush, typha. You want species of plants that are going to build biomass and grow pretty rapidly. I love a long-growing, slow-growing oak tree, but they're just not going to suck up those nutrients fast enough. So kind of plants that are going to utilize those nutrients and remove them from the water column kind of quickly. And rushes and sedges have been the most effective in my experience.
Great, thanks, Mo. Paul, I know you're working in somewhat different geographies than Mo. Anything else that you would add there?
I would just agree mostly with everything that Mo said. I think working with native plant nursery managers, they're always a great resource and tend to know really well what plants work. Oftentimes we work with traditional, practitioners and cultural practitioners. Oftentimes have a really good knowledge of what kind of plants were used historically and what work well. For us, a big area of focus is vetiver grass. We use a sterile, triploid sterile cultivar called Sunshine. We find that vetiver grass is just, incredibly powerful at dealing with a lot of pollutants in a very effective way. And then I would also encourage us all to just think about really looking at the nutrients in the wastewater as a resource, and how can we use it as a renewable resource. There's construction grade bamboos that can be utilized in these sorts of systems. And then all of a sudden we're talking about having, a renewable resource from these sorts of systems that can be utilized for construction materials or what have you. So yeah, thanks. Thanks,
Paul. And I see some comments have come in chat. Christina added, thank you for your response, Christina, about the first question, about thinking about the types of data. Christina was saying that it's important to think about how is proposed wastewater infrastructure change, and that communities have expressed concern about what new tech might work, and thinking about how to provide information on costs and statistics can really help build trust and support for wastewater improvement projects. So thanks for that insight, Christina. That's a really important thing to keep in mind. And then I see that Carlos also commented about doing some molecular tests to identify human contamination, thinking about the presence of enteric viruses, and kind of how to monitor for those. And then Chris also shared some resources in terms of sargassum. So thank you so much for those, Chris. And as Michelle said, those will be emailed to everyone. So we are almost at the end of our time today. So I want to thank everybody again for all of your great questions and answers. And I want to pass it back to Kristen to close us out and end this really wonderful session today.
Yeah, thanks, Deanna, and thanks everybody. And, you know, I know questions are still coming, and so feel free if if you have an additional question, if you hop off the webinar and something springs to mind, feel free to share it with us at resilience@tnc.org. And if you want to reach out to one of the experts directly, just shoot us an email and we can help connect you. Also, for everyone who has any resources or examples that you'd like to continue share, Chris, in addition, we don't see links here, so we'll make sure that those go out. But if there were any resources that were discussed in any of your breakout groups that you want to share with the group and with the broader group, please send it to us at resilience@tnc.org. And when we send out a summary and share the recording from this exchange, we'll go ahead and share those resources as well. And just as a reminder, we, like I said, are in the process of updating all of our resources. So you will see oh, the QR code. Got it, Roger, wrong QR code, ignore that one. But you'll get links to all the resources in the email as well. So shortly you're gonna see a pop-up survey, and if you have feedback or ideas for any future resources, please share it then. We also encourage you, if you can go to the next slide, if you aren't already a network member, we encourage you to sign up. You can do that through the link above, and you can see some of the benefits you get, but most tangibly and right away, you will receive our quarterly e-newsletters and announcements for any of the skill building or resources that we have available to you, like this exchange or other webinars. I think that's it for today. Just thank you again. Feel free to reach out to us at resilience@tnc.org. We really appreciate everyone's time. We appreciate you all joining us today, and look forward to seeing you on the next learning exchange and webinar. Thank you, and bye everyone.